Welcome to this month's iteration of our Let's CTF series. This month, we're calling our installation Let's Take a Pico, and we're going to be taking a look at some past PicoCTF challenges. I'm doing this because right now, as we speak, PicoCTF is running. It's an annual CTF competition put on by Carnegie Mellon University with the intent of helping to educate grade school through high school and even beyond in some of the concepts around computer engineering, computer science, and particularly computer security. I'm going to be focusing in on some of the general skills challenges today. Most of those deal with Python programming or generally concepts around basics of cyber or basics of computing. We'll also take a look at a couple of reverse engineering challenges, a couple of forensics challenges, and just kind of have fun with it. I'm going to see how many of these I can get done in 30 to 60 minutes, and you can all follow along with me. Now, ordinarily, if I'm running a CTF or I'm kind of doing these kinds of competitions, I'm going to be dealing with lots of kind of Linux binaries or things that work very well in a Linux environment. But to prove to you that it can be done, I'm also going to be looking at these challenges today purely using things installed on Windows. So I've got a couple of command prompts open up on my other screen. We're going to go over there, and one of them I'll use just as a general Python interpreter, since we'll be doing a lot of Python work, and the other one I'll use for general command line things. This is entirely to kind of demonstrate that, yes, even if you're not well-versed in Linux, even if you don't have virtual machines installed, you can still do a lot of these challenges. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in over here. All right, now that we're over here in our terminal, let's go ahead and take a look at how to do this. As I mentioned, we're going to be using just a couple of command prompts. I am also going to make use of some of the features of PicoCTF as we go along. And we'll see that I have made an account already, and I've started to go through a couple of challenges just to kind of make sure that the platform was working for me, but we'll redo those challenges. We'll take a look. We see 3 of them here that I've already solved. We'll redo those 3 and then jump into a few others. To help you navigate around in the PicoCTF platform, let me point out a few things. First of all, we're in the Pico Gem, which is what happens when you click this practice button up here. The Pico Gem, as I mentioned, is a bunch of challenges either created for this practice area or created for previous PicoCTF competitions. We also have our category filter over here if there's a particular area that is of interest to you. And notably, we have this web shell up here, and I'm going to make use of that for our first challenge. Up here, I also, as you can kind of see, have a terminal open for CyberChef. CyberChef is a fantastic utility that lets you do lots of kind of string manipulations and go through lots of different recipes to solve things or transform things. It's great for CTFs, but it's also great for forensics analysis, things like that. Let's start out with this cryptography challenge here called Mod 26. Description. Cryptography can be easy. Do you know what ROT13 is? And then we have some kind of encoded string. Well, ROT13 is an encoding where we think of the alphabet as a wheel, and for every letter, for every character that we get, we're going to rotate that along the wheel 13, or half of the alphabet. So if we were to do that twice, double ROT13 or ROT26 would be getting us back to where we were, because in the English alphabet, there are 26 characters. So for ROT13, I'm going to take this, I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to put that into the input field here. And then I want to grab the recipe that allows me to decode this. Well, luckily, there is a ROT13 recipe. I can just drag that in. And in fact, we can set the amount to something other than 13 if we want to. Just by sticking this into CyberChef, we already have our first flag as our output. PicoCTF, next time, I'll try 2 rounds of ROT13, followed by a unique code that is for me. My flags are going to be different than yours because one of the nice things about the PicoCTF platform is that it generates a new flag for every competitor. It's fantastic. I love writing challenges for PicoCTF because it makes the kind of creation and delivery of these things really easy. All you have to do is templatize the challenge that you're writing, and it will generate the flags for you. Absolutely love it. So now let's come back into PicoCTF here, paste that flag in, and that gives us our points. Now, I've solved that challenge already, so I don't get additional points, but that for you would be your first 10. Then I'm going to look at this obedient cat challenge. This says this file has a flag in plain sight. So we need to download that and look at it some way. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at our web shell. I did open this already and kind of put this in, and we can see that when we cat that flag, we got out this value here, sanity verified. I did just a wget with that because this Pico web shell is just a Python, a Linux shell. And so by using this Linux shell, even though I'm on Windows, even though I may not have ever installed Linux somewhere, this gives me the ability to run these commands like wget, which will download that file, or cat, which printed it out. So there's our solution to the obedient cat challenge. Next up, we have, and I've already kind of demoed it here a little bit, this nice netcat challenge, which is going to tell us to connect via netcat to this URL on this port. And like the randomly generated flags, this is also going to generate a new, a different port for me than it would for you, because this is going to be unique to each competitor. Now, I did that as I was doing my setup and test, and so we can see that the printout I got here is a bunch of numbers. Now, from my own intuition and experience, I do know that these look like they are numeric representations of ASCII printable characters. That is, things in the English alphabet that have kind of a numeric representation starting around 65. I also know that the flag format for PicoCTF is lowercase PICO, capital CTF, and then a curly brace. And so I know that I'm looking for like a 112, 105, 99, 111. I can also take this into CyberChef, paste that in, and this time instead of ROT13, I'm going to clear out that recipe, and I'm just going to go from decimal. And this is going to say, convert data from an ordinal integer back to its raw form. This is doing that ASCII decoding for me. If I drag that into my recipe, there's my flag. Good kitty, nice kitty. Again, this numeric value here will be unique for everyone, and my flag is not going to work for you, but nice and easy way to solve that challenge. So now we've done these 3 challenges that I kind of did as demo, as setup, and we can jump into some of the other ones. There are lots of them here in a number of categories. I'm predominantly going to be focusing in on this general skills category today, but we'll also take a look at a couple of reverse engineering challenges, and we might jump into some others depending on how we're feeling and what time looks like. All right, so with that in mind, I'm going to pick my next challenge, and I'm going to think of, let's do a reverse engineering challenge first. I'm going to stick with Python though for now. I don't want to have to load up any other software. So I'm going to go for one of these that has pi in the name. I'll look at crackme.py. Okay. So here, the description is just a link to a file. I'll grab that. I'll go ahead and copy that link. And I could do this inside of my web shell over here. But to demonstrate that this is absolutely possible just on a base Windows system with like Python installed, I'm going to come over here into my Python terminals. I've gone ahead and made a directory called Pico, but that's all I've done. If I look in here, it is empty. The first thing I'm always going to do when I'm working on a new project that might require me to install libraries is create a virtual environment. So I'm going to do that right here. I'm going to create a virtual environment called Pico by doing python-m, which means run a specific module, vn, which is the virtual environment module, and then the word Pico. That's going to create a folder called Pico inside of the other folder called Pico. And it's going to put some scripts and things inside of that that allow for the creation of a virtual environment. What virtual environments do is keeps an isolated space for your Python work without needing to pollute kind of your global Python namespace. So if I install a new library or kind of do whatever I need to in here, it's not going to install that globally. It's going to install a local version of that within that virtual environment. If you need to keep specific versions of something or you just don't want to pollute your space, this is a great way to do it. Now that it's been made, I can turn it on by going to Pico, scripts, and running the activate script. And we can see that my terminal changed. It's prefixed with this Pico symbol here saying that has been activated. I'm going to do the same thing over here in this other terminal just to have it done. If you're on Linux, it's not going to be scripts, it's going to be bin instead, but it will still be activate. And there are going to be a couple of different activate scripts for different types of shells if you're on Linux. Because I'm not on Linux, I'm just going to run the activate here. And now I can see that both of these have Pico in my command line, demonstrating to me so that I don't forget I am inside of this virtual environment. Now I'm going to open up an interpreter. And rather than just the base Python interpreter, I'm going to use, if I have it installed, let's find out, IPython. I do not. Okay, so let's go ahead and pip install IPython. And while that's waiting, I will come over here and I will go ahead and download that file from that link that we just saw. And there are lots of ways to do that. I could download and save it from the UI. I'm going to use curl. Oh, look at that, access denied because I didn't run this as administrator. That's interesting. Oh, it's actually not. It is group policy that prevented that. That's a little annoying. We'll just work with our base Python terminal for now and do a dry run before I do the next set of labs. So I'll go ahead and run my Python terminal. It's not going to have syntax highlighting. That's the major difference here. IPython does. That's okay. IPython also adds a bunch of stuff to your namespace that you may not want. So this is fine. Over here, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and curl that address that I got, and that is a crackme. I could see that it gave me the output here. That's because I didn't tell it where to save it. So let's go ahead and run that with our output argument. And I'm just going to call that crackme again, .py. You could put any name you wanted there. So now I have that crackme.py. Let's go ahead and take a look at that in Notepad. So let's see. I want all files and then crackme. Now I'm demoing this in Notepad specifically because I want to show that you can do this without installing anything else. The downside here is there is no syntax highlighting. So another option would be to open it in something like Visual Studio Code, VS Code, or really any other IDE that you have. You can absolutely do this in Notepad, but I am a huge fan of syntax highlighting. So I'm also, because I have it installed, going to go ahead and open it up in VS Code just to show what that difference looks like. Bear with me as I'm clicking on another screen. Sorry about that. All right, that's going to be in the Pico folder, and then crackme.py. There we go. Same thing, but just with syntax highlighting, so it's a little easier to read. All right. So it says, I'm hiding this really important number in an obscure piece of code. And it's encrypted. We want our biggest client to know the information is safe with us. And then it's Bezos CC secret, presumably credit card or something. And then there's a reference alphabet. There's something called decode secret, which says it's a ROT47 decode that already tells us something. For one thing, ROT47, 47 characters, that's more than 26. So its alphabet can't just be English letters, and we can actually see that. It is symbols and numbers and a bunch of other stuff. But there is a decode function here. So if I just ran this Python script, would it decode it for me? Well, we don't know. Let's take a look at what this is doing. In addition to this decode secret, there's also a function called choose_greatest, which takes two numbers as input and then prints out the higher of them. And then we can see that if we just run this from the command line, it's going to call choose_greatest. But that's not what we want. We want to decode that secret. So we have a couple of options. One of them is we could re-implement this ourselves. Another is that we could import this and call that function if we wanted to. Instead, I'm going to cheat. I have this file. I can do whatever I want with it. So I'm going to change this from calling choose_greatest, and I'm going to have it call decode secret, which is going to do that ROT47 decode. And the secret that I'm going to pass to it is this Bezos CC secret. So I've now modified the script that they gave me because why not, right? There's nothing stopping me from doing that. And now if I run that over here, Python crackme.py, it prints out a flag. Amazing. So this is really an exercise in knowing how to read and manipulate Python code. That's a really important skill if you are any kind of, reverse engineer or software developer, or really most things in cyber do need a little bit of knowledge in programming, particularly Python programming, because it's kind of a de facto language for the industry. So I am now submitting that flag. I got my 30 points. And what I had to do there was know enough Python to call a function, and that's it. And that's why it's 30 points instead of hundreds of points, but it's still really interesting. All right, so now that I've done that one, let's take a look back in our general skills category. And we've run two of these already that we could see right off the bat. Let's go ahead and do another Python one. So we can see that we have a Python script, we have a password, and we have a flag. Let's go ahead and copy the link. We'll download that Python script again, just like we did before. So I'm going to do curl output. What did it call this one? If I mouse over it, it is ende.py. So I'll grab that. And now if I look at that in VS Code, again, just to kind of get an idea of what that looks like, we can see that it is using a Fernet cipher. It has a usage hint here. So we want sys.argv, which is the name of the excuse me, Python script, a -e or -d, and then a file. So that's telling me it's probably encrypting, decrypting, and in fact, it has a syntax hint. To decrypt a file named poll.exe, do name of the thing, -d poll.txt, if it's a .text file. Fantastic. We can also see that it does have an encryption functionality here. It has a decryption functionality. It has a help, which prints out that help message we saw, and then an error handling if we don't give it the right number of arguments. Coming back over to our thing here, we know that we have a password and we have an encrypted flag. So let's download those things as well. I'm going to go ahead and make a new directory for this, just so that I can kind of keep everything together. Let's see. So here I'm getting the password. And let's paste in password.txt there. Great. OK, so I've downloaded that. I want to download this flag, this encrypted flag as well. So let's do curl. And then I'm just going to call that flag.txt.en, just like they did. So I've downloaded both of those. And then I had the script in the directory above. I could move it in. I'm just going to re-download it. I can call this whatever I want because I'm the one downloading it. And then there we go. Now, if I run that, let's see, it was script.py, I will be able to, oh, it's going to tell me I don't have that library. I'm missing the cryptography library. Let's see if pip will let me install that. Access denied. Let me see if I can unblock that and run it. All right, it looks like it might be, there we go. So now we are going ahead and installing that. I clicked a button. I happen to have given myself admin just prior to this. Now I have that cryptography library. Let's see if running it will work. It did. It gave me that usage print. So I know that I need -d here. I know I'm going to need that encrypted flag, but I also need to know what the password is. So let's come back over here and let's just open up that password. And I'm going to copy that. Oh, I need to update VS Code. All right, hopefully there's no RCE in that you're all going to hit me with as I'm doing this. I doubt that there is. Python script.py, and I'm going to -d for decrypt, the flag, and now it's asking me for the password, which I'll just paste in. There we go. So again, this is an exercise in knowing how to read Python and kind of manipulating some strings around. Not too hard. Paste that in, submit it. There's another 10 points. Fantastic. All right, next up, wave a flag. Can you invoke help flags for a tool or binary? This program has extraordinarily helpful information. There's lots of things that could happen here. This file is probably, because PicoCTF is generally Linux leaning, going to be a Linux binary. There are some hints, and in the live PicoCTF, often these hints cost points, but for PicoGym they don't. Yep, and so it does say this will only work in the web shell or a Linux computer. I do have a Linux VM, but let's go ahead and use the web shell for this, because we can. So let's wget this, just to download it. That gave me an executable called warm. And if I do file on warm, it is going to tell me it is a 64-bit position-independent execution executable. There's lots of things that I can do with this to try to run it. One of them is to just run it. Permission denied, so let me change mode on that to give myself execution permissions. And now I can run it. And it tells me if I pass it a -h, it's going to give me what to do. And in this case, its help is actually just printing out the flag. That's one way to solve this. A forensic approach to this might be to run something like strings on it. Strings is going to look at it and look for anything that is some number of printable characters in a row. By default, it's going to be 3 or more, and I believe the default is still ASCII. You can pass it a flag to tell it Unicode. So if I look at the strings, and I'm just going to pass that to less so I can look at all of them at once. I could also find my flag here embedded in those things that look like strings inside of this executable. Great way from a kind of initial reverse engineering static perspective without ever running this thing to find that code. And because I also do happen to know the format for code, maybe this is not encoded in any way. Maybe it hasn't been transformed to something other than PicoCTF, and I know that that's the case in fact. I can grep for that in the output of strings. So we've just found the same flag 3 different ways for this challenge. So let me copy that. All right, let me come over here. Nope, helps if I can type. There we go. Oh, my web shell is taking up my top screen here. Well, let me refresh. Maybe, there we go. All right, and so that was wave a flag, paste in my flag there, submit it. There's another 10 points for us. All right, next up, I'm gonna pick one more, and this will probably be the last one we do. We're kind of running up on time. I'm gonna grab Magikarp Ground Mission because that sounds fun. All right, so the nice thing about this one, and one of the things that this lets me demonstrate, is that some of the challenges on the PicoCTF platform launch an instance on demand. One of the things that one of my teams previously worked on for the All Army Cyber Stakes competition was a way to create, to wrap Docker containers in this PicoCTF platform, and some of that got contributed upstream. And I don't know if they're still using that code that was originally written by the folks on that team or not, but I do know that we can launch these instances on demand, and that's going to give us a shell, a something out there that we can then SSH to. A new server is now running that wasn't running before. And they typically do this for things that are a little bit more complex to run, that they don't want running all of the time because they use up resources. Now that I have this, I can go into my web shell and I can SSH, or I can actually come back into my, there we go. If you happen to have SSH installed, all right, there we go. We can even do that from Windows because it turns out that that is a thing on Windows now. We just have SSH. Isn't it fantastic? So I'll paste in my password there, which they gave me. Hopefully none of you try to do this at the same time as me because this is going to shut down as soon as I finish it. So now, once I'm connected, I can ls, and I see that I have different parts here. So first, let's go ahead and take a look at one of 3. I'm just going to cat that, prints it to my terminal, and it looks like I have the start of a flag, but not the entire thing. I'm going to just paste that into a new file over here, and then I'm going to come back to my terminal, and I'm going to look at the instructions to part 2 of 3. Go to the root of all things. More succinctly, I want to go to the root directory, /. And now if I look in here, I see all of the normal Linux root stuff, but I also see 2 of 3 flag.txt, so let's go ahead and grab that. I'll take that, I'll paste that in there. That is the next part. So I see that I am out of water. Uh-oh. Maybe this is a watering hole. Maybe they're really just trying to get a bunch of people to connect to it. Let's take a look at the instructions to part 3. So we want to go home. Okay, well, if I do cd and then the tilde, that tilde expands to your home directory. And now I look in here, oops, and I see that there is a drop-in folder, and that, well, there we go. We can see that it's a folder now because it has the directory bit set. And we have a 3 of 3.flag.txt. So that's going to be the last part of my flag. I missed the curly brace, there we go. I can now go and submit this. I'm curious to see what that drop-in directory was, so I'm gonna cd into it. Turns out that's just where I landed when I started my shell. If I looked at etc password, it would probably have that directory listed in there. So I now have my flag. I can take that flag and I can paste that right in. As I mentioned, we're a little kind of Python heavy today, really just looking at some of the introductory challenges. And one of the reasons for that is that I got some feedback from the previous couple of iterations that I did that some really beginner stuff, particularly around some of these basic Python skills, would be something that people wanted to see. And since PicoCTF is running right now, I thought the PicoCTF platform would be a fantastic way to do that. So I'll leave you with this thought. all of these things I'm doing that I keep saying, from my knowledge or from my intuition, that's just because I've done so many of these. I've written dozens or hundreds of CTF challenges. I've played dozens of CTFs. And so I start to see what these things look like. I've also written a whole lot of Python code in my career, so I know how to manipulate some of these files. All of these are skills that anyone can gain. Just put in a little time to do it. Pico as a platform is fantastic. It gives you on-demand challenges just for you that you can solve to gain a lot of these skills. And there's an active competition. The 2024 PicoCTF is running today as I am presenting this to you. So you can go and learn a bunch of stuff from that. If we go ahead and go up to compete here, we'll see there is PicoCTF 2024. You can even make a team and play as a team as you go through this. Great way to do some team building with some folks that you want to learn alongside. Oops, sorry, I didn't have my screen up. There we go. We can see if we go to compete here that we have PicoCTF 2024 running currently. If you are not a student and you enjoy this learning and have the means to do so, you can absolutely also donate to the PicoCTF project. It is a labor of love from a whole bunch of people. Yes, it is put on by Carnegie Mellon University, but that doesn't mean that it is 100% funded by them. And in fact, most of the funding does come from sponsors, corporate partners, and people like you. Gonna do the public broadcasting, and viewers like you. So if you do find this useful, absolutely contribute to it. And if you don't have the means to do that, totally okay. It's still there for you. Great way to learn. Thank you all for joining me. I may run through some more of these next month, or I might take a look at some kind of on-disk forensics challenges. If you have something you'd like me to look at, just let me know. Happy to take feedback from the audience, as I did kind of leading into this one, to focus more on some of these introductory Python challenges. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your time, and have a wonderful month if I don't talk to you before our next iteration.